I just want to introduce myself. I'm Rachel Spate from Mayor Brown, your hosts today, and we're absolutely delighted, as always, to host a Women in Mining event, and particularly delighted to host Women on Boards. So I hope you enjoy the evening. Fiona here has been to Mayor Brown before and has given a similar talk, I think, and it is fantastic. So not this one, but so I hope you'll all be inspired after it as we were, and I hope you can stay afterwards and perhaps have a drink and a nibble with us. So Fiona.
Well, thank you, Mayor Brown, yet again for allowing me the opportunity, and also Women in Mining, to talk about the 7 reasons as to why I believe it's really important for women to be at the seat of the top table. Why? Because that's where decisions are made. That's where capital's allocated. And I think the whole of society should be part of that. Now, just a little bit about me. I'm Fiona Hathorn, and my background is asset management. I was a fund manager for 18 years. And honestly, if anybody had asked me about the glass ceiling, I wouldn't have known what they were talking about. And I say that quite pointedly before I start, because you'll often get women reacting to any female-related initiatives to support individuals, and they'll often be blocked by men and women equally alike. And I possibly would have been one of those individuals, because I personally didn't get it. I do get it now, and I get it because I got involved in angel investment. And I was sitting on the other side of the table and had capital to allocate. And it wasn't until I saw female entrepreneurs come into the room and ask for capital, and I saw the reaction from the largely male-dominated room, that I got it. And when I asked the individuals in the room with me, when we were discussing each entrepreneur, what was the issue with that particular entrepreneur who I thought had a terrific idea, they explained to me, Fiona, darling, I don't think you get it. And I said, no, I don't get it. What do I need to get? And they pointed out that she might have a baby, and they weren't going to risk their capital. And it was at that very moment that I started to look into capital allocation at angel investment stage. Did you know that only 5% of capital, and this is numbers coming out of the States where, it was really quite critical in terms of number, gets allocated to female entrepreneurs. And yet in the UK today, 55% of businesses are being started by female entrepreneurs. And the numbers coming out of ASTIA, which is a really large angel group in the States, will show you quite clearly that the vast majority of new jobs are created by new businesses in the first 5 years of life. It is vital that you get that angel investment, that tipping point. And in my view, it's vital that women are at the seat of the table where capital is allocated. Now, today, I want to talk to you about 7 reasons why I think you might want to consider being either a trustee or a director of a board. And when I talk about boards, I'm not just talking about FTSE boards, because that's very in vogue at the moment because of Lord Davis's target of 25% by 2015. I'm talking about every type of board. I'm talking about a small charity board, a community board, an NHS trust board, an angel capital board, all sorts of different boards that you might wish to contribute to and bring your capital, your specialist skill set to the boardroom table to help some of those boards out. So I'm passionate and I really care about the boardroom. Now, just to show you a little bit of agenda tonight, I don't believe that we can go into the subject of the 7 reasons without looking to a little bit of history and the glass ceiling. The glass ceiling, it's no doubt that the glass ceiling is cracked. It's much, much thinner than it was when I graduated, but it's still very, very difficult. I'm sure you are all aware that women got the vote in 1918, but there are still very, very few women in Parliament, very few women indeed, and I think that's also unfortunate. But there are some fantastic role models that are out there and that are at the top. This lady, Carolyn McCall, I'm sure you're all aware that she's the chief exec of EasyJet. Harriet Green. Does anybody know where Harriet Green is the chief exec? Thomas Cook. So she's taken, it's quite interesting if you look at Harriet Green because her background is the components industry. And I really like Harriet Green because she had the confidence to ring up the chairman of Thomas Cook and say, I think I can turn your business around. And one of the first things she did, I gather, was email 36,000 employees and ask for opinions. I'm not quite sure what she did with the 8,000 replies that she got back. Quite difficult to deal with. Janet Yellen. Now, this is possibly the most powerful lady in the world at the moment because she's head of the Reserve Bank and she's setting interest rates, US interest rates, and because of the connections of currencies all over the world. Now, what is interesting about these women, they are role models, but I recently presented some of this presentation in schools recently, and it's available for you to all go into schools and do this presentation if you're interested in. None of the sixth form girls knew who any of these women were. And I was really surprised and shocked. In fact, they thought this was Angela Merkel. Now, I didn't expect them to recognise Janet Yellen, but I did think they would recognise the chief exec of EasyJet. You know, social expectations of what women can achieve are changing all the time. Now, this lady, it will be quite interesting. Does anybody know which organisation she's just about to take charge from? She's just about to take over as chief exec of Lloyd's of London, which actually, if you go into Lloyd's of London, I don't know if any have been into the Lloyd's of London, it's a sort of quite a modern building. I know it's 1970s, but it's still quite futuristic in look. It's a bit like going back in time to Dickens when you actually go inside. So it'll be interesting to see what effect that she has. And I had a really funny comment from a board director of Lloyd's recently about this lady. And they said, Fiona, you'll be so pleased. This lady has just been appointed. Isn't that fantastic? I said, absolutely terrific. And then they stopped their conversation and said, she was appointed on merit, you know. I mean, what a ridiculous thing to say. You know, of course she was promoted on merit. Now, this is another thing that's interesting and really fascinating to show to schoolgirls. I'm sure many of you have seen. But here we're looking, this is some research done by Bain and Company, 2013. This is looking at the whole of the FTSE. And you can see, it's the FTSE 250, where we are with chief execs. That's the three that we can currently see. You can see where we are in terms of university graduates, and you can see how it changes over time. So that's a snapshot of where we are today. And what I showed the sixth form girls was, can you imagine there are 100 children in your school? In fact, there were 60% boys, 40% girls. But that is possibly what your career trajectory is going to look like, that there will only be 3 of you left and the boys will take over. I mean, they were just aghast at this thought. And what was interesting is people actually don't want to go into schools and talk about it. And I think they should talk about it. Now, what I wanted to say to the girls is things is really changing, because this is what was happening 20, 30 years ago, and this is the effect of it, and it is changing now. But I think we just ought to recognise where we are today and just be a little bit aware. Now, I asked the girls, do they care? Because nobody had ever asked them that question. I suspect if I'm asking you, you're all going to say, I care. I really care. So I showed them this. Which, now it looks sort of quite good, but bear in mind that's 50%. And I showed them all the organisations, and we talked about the House of Lords and the Cabinet and where we are in terms of the seat of decision making there. But what I really wanted to show them was the Welsh Assembly and the European Union. And in fact, if you put the Scottish government on this, you'd see the same thing. What is it that makes the Welsh Assembly, the European Union and the Scottish Parliament different from the House of Commons and all these other organisations? One key difference: they're new organisations. They were set up in a new way. They were set up to include everyone in society, and they have an entirely different culture and structure as a result, which is attractive to minorities, allows minorities in, and it's quite significant. And what I was asking the girls is, do they care? And of course they really do care. They're 16, excited, enthusiastic about life, and so they should be. And I asked them what they thought was causing some of these issues historically. And of course it's a baby. And there's 2 things I always like to say when I see a picture of a baby. Number 1, it takes 2 to have a baby. And number two, it takes two to bring it up. Historically, and I think that's what's key about some of these numbers historically men weren't sharing the child rearing. They didn't know how to cook. They didn't know how to iron. And we haven't had contraception for that long, and culture's changing. And what I was asking those girls was to not judge their mothers, not judge their parents for the decisions they've made. But we're in a different society today. But I just wanted to remind them and ask them how they were being brought up. Because I don't know about you, I'm a bit of a born-again Christian on this subject. And I have to stop myself at dinner parties and barbecues when I see men going to one side talking business and women often not. And what's interesting, I used to do it myself in a social situation. When I was at home, I didn't talk business because I was one of the few working mums. And I didn't want to be judged, and I wanted to be part of the group of mothers who weren't working. So I wasn't talking business either. That's different for me because I have boys. But when I see girls not being involved in business conversations, I ask people, how are they bringing them up? Are they still bringing them up to be pretty and to please and to be socially accepted? Because I know it takes me a lot longer to get dressed in the morning because I have to make my hair and put makeup on and all that sort of stuff. And not that I don't want to do it, but it does have an effect, how society, and we're still bringing up boys to be strong and take over and be a certain style. And that's culture. And what's interesting is a lot of conversations about the extent to which women are different from men. It's in the newspapers all the time. I've read a lot of research on this, and I've yet to see some research to say that we are different. We're not different. There's more disparity within gender than there is between the genders of types. It's just the leaders at the top are a certain type. So I think thinking about how you're bringing children up, now that's a big societal thing, and different societies do things in different ways. But I think it's all part of the whole equation of what's going on. Now I wanted to introduce this gentleman to the girls. You, I'm sure, all know Lord Davis, who's been tasked by the government to look at why there are so few women in the boardroom. Now, why is he interested? Why is the government interested? Well, they're interested because they need tax receipts. They need more money. They need more people contributing to society to bring more income in, to pay for the NHS, to pay for all the services. That's why they're interested. And Lord Davis is also interested because he's really interested in stopping European quotas coming in. And they're really trying to do everything because nobody likes telling corporates what to do. Much, much better for corporates to run things themselves. But it is difficult. And it's still very, very hard. Now, so how do we get more women in the boardroom? I think you have to look at a couple of things. We're an organisation coming out of Australia, and we realised two things. Number one, women often lack access to information, and they're often not being asked to apply for board positions. So we've learnt in Australia that we just need to ask them, because often the people in the board positions think you're too busy, juggling so many things. They think you're not interested. If you're asked to apply for an NHS Trust board by an existing member of that board, you're going to apply with more confidence. Much, much more confidence. And that would be the same for a man as it would be for a woman. If you know people, lots of people, and you're talking to them at the golf club, the sports club, about what goes on in the boardroom, you're going to feel that you're more confident going for your interview if you're connecting with a very, very wide network. And one of the things that we realised is it was really, really important to give women information. And I don't mean governance information with an IOD certificated course, which are terrific, by the way, and also the FTSE NED certificates. They are really, really good. I mean the tips and tricks about how board directors are selected. What really goes on in that collegiate environment. And that's one of the things that we recognised was really, really important, that women often lack access to information. So, my reasons why I think you should all consider and think about being in the boardroom. Reason number one, it shows to your company, because I don't particularly all want you to jump off the career ladder and become non-exec directors. We want more of you staying in the pipeline, getting onto the board. But if you look at individuals that have taken on one role within their community at a leadership level, it really can say something different about you within your company. It can change people's perceptions as to who you are. It can change your perceptions as to how good you are, because everybody nowadays gets stuck in a sort of siloed career that's a specific skill set. It can be extraordinarily helpful. Now, I was lucky because my first board experience was when I was a fund manager, and I got to sit in board meetings of county council pension funds. And it was really, really interesting. Interesting because many of the trustees didn't really seem to know what was going on. The company treasurer knew what was going on. But why they didn't know what was going on was because they had been elected, because it was a county council. You had different, you had somebody from the Labour Party, somebody, and it was changing all the time. But really quite interesting to see the governance of that pension fund. The second reason is it creates a terrific point of difference on your CV. Now, I don't know whether any of you know Catherine Garrett-Cox. She's the Chief Executive of Alliance Trust. You know, one of her first board positions was on a large foundation trust board when she was working in London. And, you know, that created fabulous business connections for her as a result of going on that board. Many women I know who put their head above the parapet and go on an industry association board. It's really focused networks and connections that you can get if you think about going onto a board, and it makes your CV stand out. The other thing, reason number 3, is it can help you build your market and industry knowledge. If you go onto a board, say you are a telecoms expert, and you go on your local NHS Trust board, and they're bringing a new IT system in. You've got a fantastic transferable skill to oversee the NHS bringing in that IT system. But when you're on that NHS Trust board, you're meeting people from different industries. Maybe you're meeting people in the mining industry. Maybe you're meeting people in the aviation industry. And you can listen to them in social situations around the board table, and you can listen to their aspects of experience. And it's really, really interesting. And I've certainly, on the boards that I've sat on, met people totally out of my field of vision. And it's good fun. Networks. Networks are very, very important. And actually, if you look at the women who get their first FTSE role, they nearly always got them by knowing somebody and having somebody advocate. They rarely get them through headhunters. They get the second, third. If you're at the chief exec level on a FTSE company, you might well get a telephone call from a headhunter. Much, much harder if you're not. Networks are crucial. Now, this is some research from INSEAD on networks. There are 3 types. Operational. That's a network that you have to do your job. And if you're no good at doing your job, you'll probably get fired if your operational network's not very good. Strategic network is the sort of network that you might get if you go on a conference or if you go on a board. Outside your group. Women will often knock that network down between 30 and 40, that tipping point when they're having children. Men tend not to do that. They tend to still go on that conference. Try and go on a few conferences and get network, because the person coming and talking about what Coca-Cola is doing or TNT are doing in their industry can be valuable pieces of information for your industry, and they will sound very, very good. Personal networks. That's the network I alluded to earlier when I talked about being at the school gate myself, when I tended not to use that personal network. Personal networks are important. And sport plays a big part in the men's personal networks. Because at the golf club, at the rugby club, at those client entertainment, lots of things are being discussed, lots of information is being passed. There's nothing wrong with it, but it's a fact. It's there. Women are often missing out on those connections. So knowing about it and being forewarned, I think, is really, really useful. So reason 4. It allows you to develop your career and leadership skills. I ran a workshop recently for Wessex Water and met some terrific women. One woman was really struggling in her career, slightly bored. She'd been doing the same role for a long, long time, but she didn't particularly want to move to leave to another company. And we persuaded her to apply for a school governing board. And she got it. And she was allowed to use all those leadership skills that she'd learnt over many, many years and give that back to the community. But she also got a new sense of pride as to who she was as an individual. And she brought actually more of a positive feeling and attitude back to the company. Another lady told me that she viewed being on a board a little bit like an MBA. Not everybody can afford to do an MBA, but if you choose the right board where you have a real added value, a skill set that you're really bringing into that charity, you actually can learn about employment law maybe. There's other things that you can learn. You might learn about health and safety, all the things that you're not involved in your day job that you can learn as long as you're adding value within your field of vision. And there's lots of things that you can bring back, and you have a different sense of yourself and your worth. Continuity of your CV. I love doing corporate workshops, inspiring women to think about taking on a board position if they're pregnant and they're taking a maternity break. Those that do keep their CV going. Those that do keep their confidence up. Those that don't, but wish they had in 5 years' time, have lost their networks, they've lost their confidence. If we can get young women and men who want to take a career break and look after their children to go onto a community board, and running women on boards, you meet so many interesting people, but one of the chaps that I met is actually a non-exec director of the Scottish Government. And the nice thing about him is his first board position was when he was 32, and he decided to be the house husband, and he took a board position in the local Crofters Association. That's Toddler and Baby Group, and then he went to the Crofters Association, and he worked his way up, and he's now a non-exec director of the Scottish Government. He's in his 50s. I mean, what a great story. Now, he's got a fabulous career, but if we can get some women doing that when they take a career break, we might get them back into industry. And to me, it's all about information. Having that information and being aware. And lots of women aren't aware because it's not been around them and being discussed all of the time. Reason 6, career resilience. You do get a lot of resilience when you're in a boardroom. You have to learn to be, to listen, to not speak all the time, to not want to win every battle, to influence. And that can give you career resilience as well. And most companies, even lots of investment banks, they're really unhappy about any of their women going onto any boards because they merge everything, they advise everything. Lawyers are often the same. The truth is, if you actually look at the top management tier of an investment bank and you look at how many boards they're all on, charity boards, community boards, this board, that board, it's loads of them. Why? Because they've got influence. They can go and get it approved. So if it's okay for them, why isn't it okay for others? And most of them, I would say, in Canary Wharf are looking at their approvals process to get people approved to go onto those boards, because there's nothing wrong with it, and they're actually seeing the value. And I think the great thing about corporate social responsibility, which I don't know if any of you are involved with, I think a lot of you are involved in the mining industry, and it's quite important, corporate social responsibility in the mining industry. It means that companies are understanding that give back. You know, Vodafone have got big water projects in India. They've got charities that they're involved in. Fabulous to be involved in these things. And career resilience is one thing that it gives you. Now, finally, a lot of these things I was discussing before was about the pipeline of what you're doing within your executive career. But at least if you've taken on a few positions, even small positions, you have an understanding of what it's like to be at the committee level. And you have an understanding, and you're going to be able to explore the idea of being a non-exec director and a portfolio career when you retire. Because actually, people are living a long time now. There's lots of things that you might want to do and skills that you've learned that you want. You might not be ready to retire. And if you've had a bit of this experience, you're more prepared and you're more ready to take on a portfolio career. Why not? It's not for everyone, may not be for everyone in the room, but it might be for you, and it might just be worth thinking about and exploring. Now, I love this photograph. This is a photograph of a women's Oxford and Cambridge boat race. I am ashamed to admit that I live in Putney, and I didn't know there was a women's boat race at all until I saw this photograph in the paper. Why? Well, you know why. It's not televised. But it's going to be televised in 2015. Now notice the name, Newton. Who owns Newton? Bank of New York Mellon. Who sponsors the men's boat race? Bank of New York Mellon. Which lady is at the seat of the table with influence at Newton Asset Management? I don't know if any of you know Helena Morrissey. She's champions the 30% club, and she works with the chairman to think it's okay to have a target, maybe slightly more than Lord Davis's target, 25%. This is what happens when women are at the seat of the table of power, because she basically went, I'm sure, to Bank of New York Mellon and said, not on my watch. Are we not giving capital and supporting women? And we know that, and this was the effect of the Olympics, and wasn't it terrific? That's what happens. I may have mentioned it to you earlier, but only 5% of capital, I think this is from the Women's Sport and Fitness Foundation, have done some research, goes to female-only sport. About 40% goes to male-only sport. This is government money into sport in the UK, and the rest goes into mixed sport. Now, again, that's a quirk of history, just because women weren't doing very much sport and there wasn't contraception, and it's just how it is. But of course that has to change. But isn't it great to see somebody with influence using that influence for the right reasons? Now, in terms of what Women on Boards UK do, we run workshops, and our workshops are the tips and tricks about how to run a campaign and to write a CV in the third person that champions your skill set to get you onto a board. We'll give you a little bit of the history of corporate governance. Again, we're not trying to compete with these certificated courses, but to know a little bit about the Higgs Review, the Tyson Review, and why we've got much stronger corporate governance in the UK than is the case in the UK and Europe, because of various disasters. So we'll give you a bit of history, because it's not difficult. You can read about it, but obviously you need to understand your skill set, and we'll help you find that, because I'm sure you all have it if you want to do it. The next thing we do is boardroom conversations. Now, I did a big event last night with Google on SME and tech boards. Have you thought? Might it be for you? You might think, well, I'm not in that sector, so what's that got to do with me? Same with sport. What about pension funds? But actually, you all have skill sets that could add value on these boards. And what we're trying to do with this boardroom conversation is open up your mind to all the board sectors and give you information about what goes on in them. And we don't always have top women on them or top men. We always have men on the panel. And we like to have men at all of our events. And great to see we've got, one chap here? Fantastic to have you here. I apologise for being called women. It puts men off. And we debate that. We were only debating that earlier this evening. But unfortunately, if we want to create an environment, I want to be a bit like the Chitty Chitty Bang Bang child catcher. Let's get you in and talk to you in a comfortable environment. And our corporate workshops tend to be women only, but our external workshop are men as well as women. And there's nothing in our workshop or our boardroom conversations that's gender specific, because it's not about that. It's about what value you add. Now, the final thing that we do, we would do other things, but the three main things, is list board vacancies for you. If you know about the public sector website, you know where to go to have a look for roles. If you know about the NHS one, you know. If you know about which day the Times are doing their adverts, and the Sunday Times and the Observer, and you know that the Tate Gallery advertise on their website. If you know, you know. But if you don't know, you don't know. So what we try and do is grab all this information and put it in one place. And we'll advertise board vacancies for nothing. So if any one of you go out of the room and you hear that your local hospice is looking for new trustees, put it on our website. You can do it yourself. And we'll click it through. Because it's about access to information. Now, in the UK, we've only been going since September 2012. We launched at the end. We've got nearly 6,000 members. We've got 20 top global corporates who've joined our membership, an organisation. In Australia, we've got 22,000 members. There is no board position almost in Australia that we don't know about. And that's what we want to be. And we don't want to just do this in London. because actually they're terrific individuals across the UK. So we're running workshops and these events in Birmingham, Bristol, Edinburgh, all over the place. And it's hard work, but we're trying to get transparency. And I'm pleased to say the headhunters are beginning to take notice of us. They've started teasing with putting on their top charity chair roles, a few others, but 2 of them have actually just put up footsie roles. And it's interesting, one of our ladies, I can't mention the bank, it's a large American bank, have advertised this huge subsidiary board position in the UK, and our woman got it. Interestingly enough, she was already known to the headhunter, but she was deemed to not have enough gravitas, or wasn't known. She probably wasn't on the Royal Mint board, something like that. But she was terrific. And so by advertising on our position, we went straight through to the company. Of course, they went back to the headhunters. We don't want to undermine the headhunters. There's always going to be a role for that. That's not the point. It's about getting you information. Just a few facts about WOBS. That's our membership. We've run over 60 workshops. We've actually inspired, in our workshops, about 1,200 women have been through them. We've had 20 boardroom conversations, including the one last night with Google. We have posted about 1,500 vacancies, because this was put together in January. We've provided one-on-one support, telephone support and CV support for women who are in the middle of an interview. And what we'll do is connect you with somebody on a similar type of board. So if you ring me up and say, I've got a sports board interview, I'll find one of our members who's on a sports board, awfully similar to the one that you're being interviewed for, and we'll put you in touch. You're going to interview more confidently. And I'm pleased to say a number of men have taken us up on our offer, because we're not gender biased, perfectly happy to help anybody who's a subscriber and a member. Why wouldn't we? And we've succeeded in supporting over 100 women getting onto board roles. Now, one of the reasons I'm here today is that women in mining are looking at taking on a Getting Started workshop, and we can run that workshop at a discounted rate for you as a group, if that's what you're interested in. So I think there's some leaflets, and really that's up to you to go away and have a think about whether you'd like to be involved in that. Very happy to talk to you individually. And also Rachel, who's our sort of Chief Operating Officer, and also one of the founders of Women on Boards in the UK, is here to talk to you as well, if you want to talk to her. These are the corporates that are corporate members. Mayor and Brown, notice. All these corporates have recognised that women are a minority, and minorities often need support. They may not be a minority, because you can see them all over the place, but they're a minority up there, and they've recognised those minorities need support. Bug's Life. Anybody seen the film Bug's Life? It's my little joke. The ants are sort of worked it out, and they're working as a collective team. And actually, I'm not averse to clubs in general. Ours is an open, transparent club, and anybody can join. But we are working as a large unit. And Lord Davis, Vince Cable, think we're terrific. And we have almost a direct telephone, courtesy of all the connections that Rachel has with the Cabinet Office, so that we can actually work with them, because they find it extraordinarily hard to get women to apply for their positions, and actually we're doing a really good job on their behalf. Now, I love this video. This is my closing video, and it's a shampoo advert. What I'd like you to do, if you haven't seen it before, it's in about 2 minutes, is to not just look at it, look at the words behind it. There's a bit of music for you as well, a bit of fun.
All around me are familiar faces, worn out places, worn out faces, bright and early for their daily races, going nowhere, and their tears are filling up their glasses. No expression, no
that to the sixth form girls, and I really do mean it. There's hidden labels there, and I just don't want them to be held back. And it was really interesting going into the school and talking to them. And if any of you want, it's not just this part, it's slightly different from this PowerPoint, but any of you would like that, we don't do the 7 reasons for them, they're not interested in that. But just to get them to think about why they might be the seat of the power, just ask us. You can have the PowerPoint, you can have my speech notes, you've obviously got to amend them and put your own little bits in, but it's not just about going in to talk about your career and industry, which actually from the mining women, we'd probably love you to do that, but it's actually just engaging them to believe they get to the top, because we just don't know how hidden those stereotypical views. That might not be specific to you, but yes, please, any questions?
How do you just go into schools? Do you go into companies?
Yes, we have fun. The workshop we do with companies, we called On Track for Success. And actually what we're doing there is talking about career tips and tricks. And again, we're not giving our own opinions. We're using the Catalyst research, the mythical ideal worker, and we're also doing some research which is on impact and influence. Do you have impact? Does your voice get heard in meetings? If not, why not? Because it's quite important to understand the currency of your organisation. To get impact and influence at Google is very different than at JP Morgan, or possibly within a mining company, Rio Tinto and all the others. And where we struggle is where somebody will think it's a good idea that we come in, but you've actually got to get the budget and sign off. And we'll often get that blocked when it's communicated internally, because it's a women's thing. We don't want to do anything women's. And what's interesting is as soon as they realise we're actually just engaging them with research, and it's all positive, but we are a little bit naughty in the workshops. We do a bit of board seed thing, because we want them to believe and think about the boardroom from a young age, because if you're aware of it, it doesn't really matter whether they are youngsters coming in or they're ready to take on board positions, it doesn't matter. So we do. But what I do is I usually, for a corporate member, will go and give this type of speech to the men as well, and you have to make it fun and engaging and really get them to ask questions, because then they can open up and they can see that this isn't about a negative thing towards men, because it mustn't be. It's about talent management, objectives. After all, we count paper clips in companies to reduce our costs. Why wouldn't we count talent? Because it's our major asset. And as soon as they realise that, they're okay with a bit of positive support. But yes, we do it within companies. Any other questions? Who's on a board? What board are you on?
My company's board, which is SRK Consulting. We're mining consultants.
Excellent. So you'll have all the same governance issues and various other things as well,
Yeah,
and the responsibilities of a director financially.
I was actually interested, do you offer courses for those women who are already on a board? Because I have no one advising me and no one telling me what to do.
Well, that's interesting, because one of the things that we're about to start, which we do a lot in Australia, is mentoring. And when I say mentoring, what we're going to do is get our members to do the mentoring. So what we've got is a list of women who are FTSE women, pension fund board women, SME women, tech women, all of which have been on boards before, that are happy to talk to somebody on a similar type of board, and we'll act as a conduit to put you in touch. And it will be slightly contractual, because if it's not working, then we need to sort of change you, because when you're mentoring, personality is important. So that's something we will be rolling out, because it's valuable. And in your case, it's about articulating why your own board and your experience from an own board is valuable to be on another board, and how you sell it. Another question. Anybody else who else is on a board? What board are you on?
I'm on the advisory board for the School of Social Sciences at Rice University.
And how have you found that experience?
Well, I just joined it, so it's from this discussion, what's nice about it is the networking and the meeting people outside of my arena.
Yes.
It's been really great, but also being able to shape any kind of education policy is fascinating.
Yeah, really give back. So please give it some thought, and please do have a think about whether you want to come on a workshop. You can see the prices. We're trying. The great thing about our pricing structure is that we get the corporates to provide all the free venues and all the support, and it's really, really important. But again, it's up to you as to whether you want to do this. Thank you.
Hi. Most of you know me. I'm Amanda Van Dyke, and I'm the chair of Women in Mining. One of the reasons we invited women on boards here tonight is because, as most of you know, we write a bit of research on women on boards in the mining industry, and there are less women on boards in the mining industry than in any other industry in the world. And we actively believe, and we've demonstrated through research, that women on boards in the mining industry actively make a difference in terms of making mining companies more corporate socially responsible, making them more efficient and more profitable. And that getting more women onto boards, visibly onto boards within the mining industry, can and will make not only the mining industry a better place, but the mining industry a better place for women within it, and helping them contribute and make a difference. We'd very much like as many of you as possible to consider taking a course with women on boards, because the more of you that are thinking about board positions and working towards board positions, the more of you are likely to get there. So if you can consider it, take it home, take it back to your companies, and encourage women who you think might be interested to start that process. We think you would be making a very valuable contribution to not only your own careers, but to the mining industry as a whole. I'd also like to very much thank Mayor Brown, who's been a long-term supporter from the very beginning of Women in Mining, and Women on Boards for coming here to talk to us and share their thoughts and hopefully help us further the cause, as it were. So thank you both very, very much.